back to the Geek Speak Radio Show on TalkZone.com. Here's Henry and Romo.
And we're back on the Geek Speak Radio Show. Ready to be scared again, young man?
Of course. I always love to be scared.
Nah, this one will hit closer to home, actually, because we're heard all over the world, really, on the internet also, but we're heard all over the country. But we are here. Our studios are here in San Francisco. So let's talk to an author who wrote a book entitled Ghost Hunter's Guide to the San Francisco Bay Area. These are actual haunted places, and you can imagine how many people are going to try it anyway, because this is the week for it anyway.
Of course, right?
This is not an attraction like the haunted houses that we've had that we featured all month.
Yeah.
This is an attraction. These are real haunted places. They happen all year long, whether it's Christmas, Easter, 4th of July. They'll be there.
Yeah, because I noticed that in the book itself, you mentioned Alcatraz Island, and I've been there. I'm not so haunted, but I know there's mysterious things that go on at night. So that's what I love about this book, Ghost Hunter's Guide to the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah, so his name is Dr. Jeff Dwyer. He's a paranormal investigator and author now, of course, and he's on the phone line with us.
I'm here, Henry and Romo. Good afternoon.
How are you? Thanks for coming on the show.
I'm great. I'm always thrilled to talk about paranormal activity. I don't mean the movie.
Yeah, as are we. This has been a month-long celebration for us. This is definitely our favorite holiday.
Yeah, Halloween has become a season now. It's no longer just one day out of the year. And for paranormal investigations, Halloween is typically year-round for us.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, Jeff, actually, before we get into the books themselves, I was going to ask you, did you have any belief in the paranormal or any experience that you had before the age of 10? Because we're going to talk about that from your bio. But did you have any belief or anything before that?
No, I didn't. I wasn't aware of anything except for the typical ghost stories that kids listen to around Halloween, things like that. It was only when I was about 10 I had my first experience. And then it was still slow for me to pick up on what was going on. I think I was around 16, 17 years old before I really started to collect ghost stories out of magazines and newspapers and started to think about it in a serious way.
Well, what did you notice when you were 10 years old?
I was at the Brookdale Lodge in the Santa Cruz Mountains and saw an apparition come up over my left shoulder as I was looking into a stream. I thought it was my sister because the apparition kind of looked like her in a way. But at that moment, my mother called to me from a plateau above the stream where I was located, and I looked up and saw my sister standing next to my mother. So within an instant, it's not possible for my sister, who was only about 6 at that time, to climb all the way up and stand next to my mother. So I realized I'd seen something. Didn't know what it was, really, although somebody that very day said there were ghosts around. Didn't think much of it. But then I realized that I'd seen something I can't really explain. It was a few years later that I got more stories about Brookdale Lodge. I realized I'd seen the ghost of Sarah Logan, who drowned in that stream when she was about 10 or 12 years old.
I think I mentioned it before on the air, but I think I've seen some things myself, and then you don't see. It's not like in movies where you see the whole full apparition that's glowing. It's just a very fleeting glance. You think it's a shadow. You sometimes you start to question yourself. Did I really see something? So that's when you probably know that. Yeah, you did see something, right? Because it's not a full-on, like I said, it's not like in the movies where you see a full-on glowing apparition.
That's right. In fact, most paranormal investigators have never seen an apparition. A few of us have. I've seen actually quite a few, and in almost every case, they're partial. Very typically, it's from the knees up. It's transparent. Sometimes you'll see just the head and one arm. Sometimes just one hand. But it's almost unheard of that you'll see something that's completely a full-bodied and lifelike apparition, although I've seen 2 of those, I believe, in my lifetime.
Why do you think people are so, not obsessed, but just so interested in the paranormal and in ghosts, and not just around Halloween? Just like you said, it's becoming like a year-long thing now.
It's a little hard to explain, and it actually surprises me that the paranormal has become so popular. If you go back in time, you look back in the 80s, reincarnation was kind of the big thing at that time, and this followed on the heels of a minor spirituality movement that came out of the hippie era and the drug era of the 60s and the 70s, and it's just sort of an evolution. These days, I think people are interested in the paranormal because there's more and more evidence that there's something really to it. It's not just some sort of fabrication in someone's mind. And people are really curious about what goes on after we die.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's just that people just want hope that there's something to look forward to in the afterlife.
We like to believe there's something more than just being meat for the worms. We'd like to think that there's a survivability of our consciousness or our soul, whichever you want to call it. And this offers people a lot of assurance that, things are going to be okay.
Do you think the shows, because like you mentioned, there's a lot of paranormal shows out there on television. Do you think those give paranormal investigations a bad name or make people not really take it that seriously?
Well, they've done a couple of things. They've stimulated a lot of interest in the paranormal, and out of that, some serious researchers and investigators have sort of come on the scene. But on the other hand, they do give us a bad rap sometimes because of various ways they go about their investigations. A lot of the shows that we see on TV use the instrumentation incorrectly, interpret the results incorrectly, and some of them, in order to make the shows more dramatic or more interesting, have a personality that's a little bit over the top, I think, and it turns off some of us in the paranormal community. But I guess it sells ratings, to the shows.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say I've watched some of those, and because I've always been interested in the paranormal myself since I was young. But I've watched some of those, and that's exactly what turns me on. And I know I'm in the media myself, but I think of them as carnival barkers. Like, hey, look, over here is this apparition, over here is this room, and that, like you said, just gives you a bad rap when the real paranormal investigators.
I think they have to dress it up sometimes because, after all, it is kind of tough to put on a show week after week where you actually display something that's paranormal, because in many cases, paranormal investigators have to go to a location several times before you pick up some credible evidence. And these shows can't afford to do that. They go out and spend 3 or 4 days filming a show, and they've got to get something. And if they don't, or if it's really relatively minor evidence, they have to dress up the production to make it more interesting for people.
Yeah, I was going to say that the actual apparitions, they don't perform on cue. Like when you go to your, the haunted houses that everybody puts on now, it's all, electronically controlled. But real apparitions, they don't perform for you. They come out when they want to come out. That's exactly right. In fact, most of the evidence that these shows present and the evidence that paranormal investigators present at conferences, most of it doesn't reveal an apparition. At best, sometimes they'll capture a shadow that's unexplainable in terms of photographic technique. But most of the evidence is audio. It's relatively easy to get audio evidence, and ghost hunters call this electronic voice phenomenon. And you go in with EVP, and you walk in with a digital recorder running, and you sort of invite the ghost to communicate with you. You ask them pointed questions based on research, and sometimes you get back some really fascinating responses. I listened to one over the weekend that was captured on Alcatraz not long ago. The San Francisco Ghost Society was out there, and they were in Al Capone's cell playing a recording of a song that Capone actually wrote while he was on Alcatraz. And at the end of the recording, they asked, Al, did you like the song? And a very rough voice is heard on the audio playback that says, yes, I did, that kind of thing. And it's unmistakable that's some sort of a ghostly response. Yeah, I've heard a lot of EVPs myself. So again, we'll take a little break right now. We're talking to Dr. Jeff Dwyer. He's the author and paranormal investigator, the author of Ghost Hunter's Guide to the San Francisco Bay Area. We'll get into the books themselves in just a few minutes. So those of you who are here in San Francisco, get ready to go out there and maybe experience some things on your own.
The Geek Speak Radio Show will be right back.
And now, more of the Geek Speak Radio Show on TalkZone.com. Here's Henry and Romo.
And we're back. Well, here's Henry at least. Romo's under the counter there because he's scared. Quick note before we continue with Dr. Jeff Dwyer. Quick note from our last guest, Mike Berkey, RominaMan.com. He is going to be featured on Sci-Fi's Hollywood Treasures. This will be on November 9th and November 24th. Check the listings for the exact time. Again, Mike's collection, you guys can see it, quote-unquote, live on Sci-Fi's Hollywood Treasures on November 9th and November 24th. And I'll get a listen and maybe put it up on GeekSpeakRadioShow.com. Right now, we are getting a look at haunted San Francisco. from Ghost Hunters Guide to San Francisco Bay Area, author Dr. Jeff Dwyer. So, Jeff, let's talk about the book itself. That was your first book, right?
Yes, it was. It came out in 2005.
I'm not going to ask what kind of research went into it because obviously you know what you're talking about. But what, besides the obvious, I think my co-host Romo, he mentioned Alcatraz. Besides the obvious ones that we think and know are haunted, what are some places that we wouldn't think are haunted that you mentioned in the book?
There's a place called the Neptune Society Columbarium in San Francisco, out near the west side. And it's one of the last burial places in San Francisco. There are only 3 in the city. There used to be more than 40, but these cemeteries were moved around 1900 at the end of the bubonic plague epidemic. People don't know that San Francisco had a plague. It started in about 1898 and continued till about 1901. And it was feared that the bodies would continue the plague, so all the cemeteries but 3 were emptied. One is Mission Dolores, which is haunted. The other is the Presidio National Cemetery, which I've not heard that's haunted. But the final one is the Neptune Society Columbarium, which houses the remains of about 7,000 people. And apparitions have been spotted in this place, together with a lot of audio phenomenon. And the most commonly seen apparition is that of Viola von Staten, who was a little girl about 8 or 9 years old, who died right after the 1906 earthquake because she drank tainted water. Most of the wells in San Francisco were tainted at that time. And she became sick and lingered for a couple of weeks and then finally died. But her apparition is seen just outside of the niche, which contains her ashes and the ashes of family members.
I can imagine the Presidio is pretty haunted. I mean, every time you drive through there, it just feels different than the rest of San Francisco.
Yeah, the San Francisco Art Institute up on Chestnut is also haunted. This building was constructed on one of the many cemeteries that was moved out of town. And apparitions have been spotted in the tower, mostly. And so it has nothing really to do with the art school itself. This is a case where a ghost occupies a structure that was constructed after its death. It's simply the structure's on a site that was important to the ghost.
What made you want to write the book?
Well, I grew up in the Bay Area, and, of course, since my teenage years, I just collected ghost stories and became more and more fascinated with it. And then not too many years ago, I was getting frustrated with getting my novels published, and somebody told me I should write something really strange. And I thought about it for a while, and I thought, well, ghosts are kind of strange. So I sat down and wrote the book, largely thinking I would simply pass it out to friends. But my literary agent got hold of it and sent it into a major publisher, and then they sent me back an 8-book contract. So I've been writing books ever since.
That was the first one you wrote, but you had other ones in the Ghost Hunter series, right? Tell me about those.
Well, the second book was Los Angeles, which covers actually Santa Barbara down to San Diego. And then I wrote New Orleans. Although I'm a West Coast-oriented writer, I thought I would write about New Orleans because that's considered the mecca for ghost hunters.
Right.
I did that. And I've been down there several times since Katrina, and I found that the ghostly activity is still continuing down there. Then I wrote Seattle and the Puget Sound, and that was followed by the Wine Country book, which covers Napa, Sonoma, and Mendocino counties, and also a book about the Gold Rush country, which came out not too long ago. My most recent book came out in August, and it covers Monterey and the Central Coast, and that really extends from Half Moon Bay down to San Luis Obispo. And that was a lot of fun to write because I did a lot of surfing and scuba diving in the Monterey, Santa Cruz area for many, many years, and still go down there quite often.
And I have a link up to Jeff's website, jeffdwyer.com. I have it up on geekspeakradioshow.com. It has the links to all the books, and you guys can take a look at some of the excerpts on there. And, of course, go and buy the books if you so desire. So Jeff, I was going to ask you, you told me about some of your experience, your personal paranormal experiences. Have you ever had anyone that you would consider dangerous or scary, or that it just felt evil to you?
Yeah, I did. I was in the Alexandria Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, and this hotel was built in 1922, and it used to be the fanciest hotel in Southern California. And, in fact, a lot of movie stars stayed there during the heyday of Hollywood. But, of course, over the years, it became a typical downtown rundown hotel, and it's currently undergoing some sort of, renovation. But I was down there investigating a crime scene. Apparently, a fellow went out a window on the 11th floor, went through the glass, went through a screen, and landed on a parking meter down on the street. and of course he died. And it wasn't clear whether this was a suicide or a murder. So I was there, and after the police cleared out of the area, I went up, and some evil power came up behind me and pushed me about 20 feet across this lobby on the 11th floor right towards that window. Now, there were 10 windows on this wall, but I went right towards the one that was still broken and the screen was torn. And it felt as though I was in the ocean and a wave had picked me up and moved me. And because of that similarity, I simply recalled my days as a surfer and rolled off to the side perpendicular to the force and escaped it and left the floor. My impression was that there's some sort of evil power up there that might have pushed this fellow out the window, and I was lucky to escape. But that's the only time I've been really scared to the point where I feared for my life.
On your bio on the website, I also read that you've experienced not possession, but I forget exactly how you call it, but when a spirit passes through you. Tell me about that.
It's shared space, and there's a number of terms for it. It isn't possession, and it's a sensation that it's hard to explain, but it's very weird. It's like somebody else, something is inside you, and you almost feel a change in the perceptions you get from your body. I experienced this at the Coleman Mansion down in Menlo Park, and my associate Lloyd Auerbach has experienced this over in Moss Beach Distillery, which is over in Half Moon Bay. And it's a feeling that somebody else has occupied your space. Sometimes you feel very light, cold suddenly. Those two sensations occur together often. And people feel this sometimes and don't know what it is, but it's a ghost passing through your body. When I experienced it, the ghost actually remained within me for a period of time. And it was a strange sensation. And this particular ghost was female. And I don't know how to describe it, but I really felt my gender had changed.
When that happens, can they control your actions or make you do something you don't want to do?
Not in the case of ghosts passing through you, no. And I'm not sure I believe in the idea of a demonic possession. There's certainly a lot out there, and there's a tremendous amount of evidence within the historical records of the Catholic Church about demonic possession and exorcisms and things of that sort. And they believe that there can be demonic possession. But I think ghosts cannot make you do things that you don't want to do.
Again, we're talking to Jeff Dwyer. He's the author of Ghost Hunter's Guide to the San Francisco Bay Area, as well as other Ghost Hunters books. Again, it's all up on geekspeakradioshow.com. You guys can go on there, order the books, take a look around, and get to know more about Jeff, more than you're learning right now. You also had some paranormal experiences in a hospital, so tell us about those.
Yeah, hospitals are probably the most haunted location. They're very difficult to research, obviously, because of the high security that takes place in hospitals these days. But hospitals are full of paranormal activity, not only ghosts, but also what we call imprints. Imprints are laid down on the electromagnetic field of the environment by the intense repetitive emotions experienced by living people. And if you can imagine being in a hospital and lingering for days, knowing you're going to die, it's a tremendous emotional experience. And then that energy, if you will, is laid down on the environment, and sensitives who go into a room can pick up on that. And so hospitals are full of that kind of thing. This is a residual energy left not only by patients, but also grieving family members as well. And a lot of nurses, doctors, and others who work in hospitals often tell me about apparitions they see, cold spots they encounter and can't explain, or just a terrible feeling of grief, fear that they get when they go into a particular room in a hospital. So this is a sign, I think, of paranormal activity, not always ghosts. But there are a few hospitals you can go into. There's one in Los Angeles called Linda Vista Hospital that was abandoned really in the late 80s because it's in a really bad part of town and doctors were being assaulted, and one, in fact, was murdered in the parking lot. This hospital has been featured on some of the ghost shows like Ghost Adventures, and it's possible to get into a tour of the place and do paranormal investigations. But I don't know any hospitals like that here in the Bay Area.
So Dr. Jeff Dwyer, paranormal investigator and author. One of the books is Ghost Hunter's Guide to the San Francisco Bay Area. Again, it's on the website, our website at geekspeakradioshow.com. You guys can go on there and buy it, get the books, learn more about Jeff, like I said. So Jeff, thanks a lot for coming on and talking to us about your books and your experiences.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure, and happy Halloween.
Thank you. Same to you. Now you know where to go, young man.
Yes, I do.
To really get scared.
I didn't even know that Angel Island was actually haunted. I've seen it, but wow, I really, I know people that could camp there. So if I do go there, I'm going to read this book and try to find what's haunting it.
So there you go. Thanks again today to Ross Carpelman from the House of Shock in New Orleans, Mike Berkey from RomitaMan.com. And again, he will be on the Sci-Fi's Hollywood Treasures on November 9th and November 24th. You want to see his collection on there. And Dr. Jeff Dwyer, who we just talked to. Tomorrow, we will talk to, well, surprise. Just come on back tomorrow, same time, same bat channel, to quote your favorite TV show.
Yeah.
And you'll find out exactly what we're going to do. Or you can just go on geekspeakradioshow.com, look at the calendar and find out. So till tomorrow, bye-bye. Go get some treats, but we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.